Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I am your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, the editor, publisher of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He is Mr. Dave Meltzer. Dave, welcome to two-man power trip. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good. What's going on in your world? I know you're keeping super busy, but what are you working on lately?
Oh man, this week. I mean, every week's got a lot of stuff, but yeah, this week a lot of the stuff was the Vince McMahon stuff. Really worked really hard on, the going with the lawyers back and forth, and a lot of other people involved in that case. So I did a lot of research, and his lead story in the new issue, and it's something different. I've covered Vince for 42 years, and it's pretty amazing. How it all turned out in the final act. It kind of blows my mind, the final act of Vince McMahon, and him trying to essentially overcome, at 78 years old, not wanting it to be what he's remembered for, and it's going to be very difficult for him.
When you look at that, he just sold all of his stocks, all of his shares in TKO, so
he's
no
selling.
longer
He's selling.
is selling.
Yeah.
So he will no longer be any part of WWE.
He's not any part of WWE now. I mean, he was a shareholder, but he's had no contact from a business standpoint. At least that's the rules. I mean, is there something going? Does he talk to somebody there? I mean, they say no, and he may not, but yeah, he's had no part of it since the resignation. Since the lawsuit, basically a couple of days after the lawsuit came out. Yeah.
How crazy is it to think, though, he's got no part in them whatsoever, and he's going to sell the shares, so he's got no part of wrestling at all, technically.
Nope. And he was the most influential character in the history of the business. And it's not how I don't think anyone envisioned the end of Vince McMahon in wrestling to be what it was. If of all of the people that he went against and everything like that, the one who took him down was a woman, that he had an affair with.
Or basically himself, like his own.
Well, he was himself. It is himself. Yeah. I mean, for the realistically, I mean, all of those things that are alleged or in the lawsuit are absolutely horrible, of course. Okay, but what did it wasn't necessarily those things, but the fact that he, it could have been and should. You could even say should have been, but what took him down was the idea of not paying, the $500,000 installment, in what was it, 2022, I believe, 2023, and then the second one would have been 2024. Yeah, so in early 2023, not paying that installment, which led to the lawsuit, where everything came out, and I think that he just felt, it's Vince. He had his reasons for not paying it because it was supposed to be confidential, and some of the information got out, so he felt that she breached the agreement. So she sued him, and now there's the big bunch of technicalities right now. Right now, Vince's attorneys are trying to argue that the NDA had a provision that you could not sue; you had to go to arbitration. And having seen the NDA, it's absolutely there. Okay, that's not even a debatable point. But when he didn't pay the $500,000 in February 1, 2023. To me, that would negate the NDA because of non-payment. He did not live up to his end of the deal. He's arguing that he had every right to not pay because she didn't live up to her end of the deal first. But if then they neither have lived up to the deal, then how is the deal valid? The McMahon side argues the deal's still valid. She has no right to sue, and he's trying to get the suit thrown out on those grounds. And, obviously, Janelle Grant's attorney, Ann Callis, and her team are trying to argue that, he voided the agreement. So therefore, how can you be held to the agreement and the lawsuit should continue? But for Vince, whether it's thrown out or not, how does he recover from this? It's like, I know what his hopes are. And it's like, okay, it goes to arbitration, even if whatever happens in arbitration in essentially in secret, whatever the thing is, and however the arbitrator decides, none of that's going to rehab Vince's image. And Vince is trying to rehab his image. And I don't, he's hired a firm, he hired the same firm that Weinstein hired to rehab his image. And man, I don't know how he can. I don't know how he can do it. But it's like, yeah, he wants to do it. He wants to be back in business, not necessarily wrestling business, but he absolutely wants to be back in business. And has to clear his name first. And I don't know how he's going to be able to do it, but it'll play out over the next, however long it takes.
Yeah, the perception is not good. Like if you want to say he gets off or whatever, but the perception is all this bad stuff about him. So.
What's getting off? I mean, it's not money wise. Like if there's a suit, however the suit ends, it ends. I suppose if in theory, I would say if it goes to trial and the jury awards her no damages and she looks bad in the case, in the testimony, and her whole story falls apart, perhaps his image could be rehabbed. But I don't think that they want the trial in the first place to do that. And if you go to trial, I mean, the risks are real high because, who's the jury going to be sympathetic with when this stuff comes out? Especially, I think the key really in my mind, and it's actually going to come out pretty soon, is John Laurinaitis. Because if John Laurinaitis backs up her story, he can't go to court. If he has the other person or one of the other people involved in the case basically saying, yes, her story's true, and then you put this thing in front of a jury of people where you've got this billionaire, and she's suing, she's getting a lot more than $3 million if Laurinaitis backs her. I mean, and she's getting a ton of money if that's the case. So that's why it's not going to go, I don't think. If Laurinaitis backs Vince, which we would have all assumed would happen, except from everything Laurinaitis' attorney has said, he hasn't done that. His been the opposite. If Laurinaitis backs Vince, then we're in a free for all again. We don't know what's going to happen, but a jury could be very sympathetic to her. A rich billionaire who, claims that he abused her. Has all of these details of all these horrible things, and it's detailed on the day and the time and everything like that. And Vince's response was basically to just say she's a liar, but with no, with nothing other than claiming that she, that she misrepresented being a caretaker to her father, which of course her side denies. That the father died 2 years earlier than their affair started, which it was not like right away, but I don't know if that's even that significant. And that she was cheating on her boyfriend with Vince, which her side claims was an ex-fiance, but no longer a boyfriend at the time. But even if all of that's true, that's not really, that's like, obviously there's some attempt of character assassination on her, which we knew that's what he would do. That's what the lawyers are going to do. But it doesn't change any of the details of the actual story of to why people don't want to deal with Vince right now. It's just like, let's assassinate her character. And it's like, I don't think that's, no matter what they do and try to say and how all that goes, it turns into some debatable points for some people, but it doesn't help Vince. It might hurt her, but it can help Vince.
When you look at it too, like, okay, Vince, all this is going on, this stuff with Janelle Grant, but what happens if he decides to, when he's looking at it in the rear view, what happens if he tries to get back in the wrestling? Is that possible? Is that rumor really out there that he might actually try to start his own company?
All I know is from people very, very close to him, the answer is no, he would never start a company against WWE, and he couldn't. I mean, he has the money to do it, sure, but who's he going to get? I mean, when Tony Khan started, there, you got to remember the scene in wrestling was completely different in 2018 than it is now. In 2018, there was, New Japan was on fire. They had all these wrestlers. The independent scene, there were guys that were from the United States that were flying back and forth from Europe on weekends. And there's so many talented guys that were not in WWE and not in TNA either, or Impact Wrestling as it was known. Some of them were in New Japan, but those New Japan guys had, the rights to, work the United States. And, a lot of them were in Ring of Honor, but, there was an opening with a lot of top talent that Tony Khan had, and a connection with TNT and TBS that he had. Vince, yes, he would have an incredible amount of money to start something, but he's not starting against just one company. And also WWE wasn't that strong then compared to now. He would be going against a far, far, far stronger WWE than Tony Khan started against, and a Tony Khan led promotion, and every basic wrestler worth of crap is under contract to one of those two companies. Other than, there's a few in TNA and some in New Japan, but not enough for Vince. Not enough. There's no super marketable guy Vince can get behind. Could he raid people in WWE? Who's going to go with him? WWE itself has all the money in the world. TKO. They're not going to let Vince get anybody, and Vince isn't going to want it. Vince isn't. Plus, you're talking about years and years and years and years of startup costs that may or may not pay off, but he doesn't even have any talent. It's like, if you really look at this position from Vince, any logical way, there's no way he can successfully start, because you're talking about tens and millions of dollars in startup costs. And he's a 78-year-old man who, and again, has to go against this monster WWE, not a weak WWE, has to go against an AEW. Plus he's got to figure out who's going to do business with him. As far as like TV, it's like most people are going to be very wary of doing any business with him. So no, I don't see him starting up a wrestling company. And like I said, from people very close to him, he doesn't see it either.
The thing with Vince is, okay, he built this business. He's the most influential guy. He did all this great things business-wise for WWE. As soon as he's gone, the creative is like through the roof better, in my opinion. I just think it's so much better. His philosophy for the last 20 years, since he had no competition, was like, we'll throw out stuff for WrestleMania. Like the booking was 50-50. Just not good. What do you think about Triple H taking over? Because I feel like, man, night and day booking.
It's stronger. It's strong. Yeah, it's stronger. There was a lot of different things that led to momentum, and some will argue Vince somewhat set the table of a lot of this. Vince is the one who got Cody to come, and he's been very, very important. The Rock would have come with or without, if Vince was there, it wasn't Levesque who got The Rock in. That was Nick Khan, and Vince would have done that too. And, look, they were talking about The Rock since 2019, and then the pandemic came, and then The Rock had things to do. But the Roman Reigns Rock match had been talked about for years and years and years, and was always probably we're going to do it. So it's like that's as much of a Vince thing as anyone. That's not a Levesque thing. And those were the keys. But I'm not knocking anything. I think that Levesque's done a very good job. I think the TV's much, much better than it was. And that's another hard pill for Vince to swallow, I think, in the sense that wrestling went on without him and flourished, so that there was this idea years and years ago, and I never bought it, that, Vince was so important that if he was gone, the whole house of cards falls. And I especially now with the way the TV rights are set up, WWE is an idiot-proof business, but they're not run by idiots. But if they were run by idiots, if they were run by the most incompetent people who have ever run a wrestling company, they were run by the people who put WCW out of business. Their television deals and everything are such that they would be incredibly incredibly profitable for the next 10 years anyway. They're completely idiot proof.
Triple H is in a good situation right now. Obviously, Roman Reigns out of action for a while here, but huge star, put up huge numbers. Do you think Cody can match that and kind of keep the momentum going? Because Roman set the table pretty well.
He's already proved it at the house shows for the last year. Yes,
wow,
no doubt. Not a doubt. Roman Reigns worked very few house shows, virtually none. Cody worked every weekend at the house shows. The house show business is way, way, way up from what it was. Even when Roman Reigns was working full time, the numbers weren't close to what they were this last year. So no, Cody, Roman Reigns, there's nobody indispensable. Cody could get hurt for a year and it would hurt too. But the law, Cody absolutely. There's not. He's already proven in the last year he can carry the ball, and in next year's WrestleMania, unless something happens where Dwayne gets hurt, we already got the main event, and it's guaranteed. If that one's a guaranteed winner, Rock and Cody. So they're so safe. They got no. They may have inner problems, but as far as popularity problems and as far as marketing to the public, they got no problems.
And then you got Punk coming back. Roman will be back, so he's got opponents lined up eventually too.
Yeah. Punk coming back will be big, at least at first. But you know, I mean, Punk's got, you know, he's going to walk into Drew McIntyre feud, probably Seth Rollins feud. They've got stuff already lined up for Punk. You know, it's not like that to start anything from scratch with him. They're keeping his name alive on TV right now. McIntyre's done a phenomenal job of keeping Punk relevant, I guess, and the fact that they keep Punk on TV, you know, helps a lot too. So yeah, you know, it's right. It's like there's you know, there's good stuff coming up, and there's still twists and turns, you know, as far as when Roman comes back. Does he come back as a babyface against Solo? I mean, obviously Roman Reigns and Solo was something that had been built for a year as well, you know, that they haven't even pulled the trigger on, and they are in no rush to pull the trigger on. So yeah, there's so many yeah, they got great stuff coming up. They're in great shape.
I love they could just pull AJ Styles out and put him in the main event because he's believable and he's great, and he could fight Cody in the main event, and people are into it and they'll buy it. So I mean, they've got guys lined up even after the guys that they have lined up.
Yeah, they could put LA Knight in the same position, and you know, I mean, it was an interesting topic on which one do you pick, because LA Knight, you know, way more popular than AJ. Obviously, AJ the better wrestler of the two. AJ's a fantastic wrestler. But you know, I mean, then you get the babyface heel dynamic with if you put in AJ, which for Cody is probably somewhat better. I mean, because do you want the mixed reaction? To me, I don't care. You can do the mixed reaction. You could put LA Knight in there. I think it might have been. I mean, I would say it'd been slightly bigger, but would it have been more beneficial? Maybe no. But as far as like who's going to give you the best match, and now when the money's guaranteed, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like who's going to draw more on pay-per-view. That's not even a metric anymore. It's you know, the pay-per-view number, while I report it, is those are so small numbers. It's like basically you can put whatever you want. So the idea now is you can really book with the idea of what makes the best show, as opposed to what, you know, hand to mouth, what will make us the most money, and that's what we have to, you know, judge everything on. Now we really can go through this and just go, what will make the best show for the people and the most entertaining show? And those are two completely different dynamics: best show versus what draws the most money.
That is true, because PLE versus pay-per-view is completely different business, because you already have that, you know,
you have all your money.
Yeah.
Yep. And whatever it is, let's say you do one does 2.1 million viewers and one does 1.8 million. The reality is that nobody but Peacock really is going to know. And it's not going to be relevant to Peacock because, I mean, it's slightly relevant as far as that goes, but I mean, they're still a valuable property and a key part of Peacock, no matter what the number is, you know, as far as getting people to sign up and everything. So, you know, I mean, like, just the fact that they're doing so many of these shows overseas in the afternoon or the morning just tells you how completely different it is. Because when they were in the pay-per-view business, they wouldn't dare do anything out of prime time, because, you know, you would give up too much revenue by doing stuff out of prime time.
Going back to Cody for a second, looking at all the metrics like quarter-hour ratings, merch from what I've seen online.
Yeah, he's always near the top.
Yeah, all the metrics that, you know, that Triple H points out and people point out. I mean, he hits a home run, right? Pretty much on every single metric
across the board. Yeah, and he does a great job. I think it's like Cena, and in some ways better than Cena, even as far as connecting with the people, being a, you know, kind of a good guy, you know, signing the autographs and everything. It's that role. He's that role of the baby face of the company. I mean, look, he's drawn more than Cena ever drew. I mean, people may not want to make that connection after 1 year and him just winning the title, but the reality is he's drawing far more. They're more successful than they ever were under Cena. They're drawing far more people at the arenas than they drew with Cena. You know, I mean, yes, less TV viewers, but if you look at all the viewers, you know, I mean, everything's so fragmented in the sense that people watch on YouTube and they watch in different ways. The big shows are being watched by multiple times more people than they ever were before because of being on Peacock. But yeah, he's, you know, people will talk about Cena and everything and how successful he was, but Cody's already ahead of all of Cena's numbers.
If that's the thing about Cena, when they say he's the greatest of all time and stuff like that, I've
He's
always
not.
looked at him. I was like, the metrics and the numbers, he may led to more people not watching than watching. If you think about where they were, like, it's just one of those things where I don't know about greatest of all time. He got booed by half the audience. I mean, there's a lot of
Well,
like things you
hey,
could poke
I mean,
holes in.
it's like all time is a long time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
yeah,
mean, when you're talking about comparing him to Luthez or Bruno Sammartino or Hulk Hogan or whoever, or Ric Flair or all these people in whatever category. I mean, no one will ever say as a wrestler, no, not even close. He's not even the top 100 of all time as a wrestler. As a
right.
popular commodity, he is in the, he's top 20 of all time. He
Yep,
really is, but he's not number one. It's not like he did what Hulk Hogan and Sammartino did, or what Steve Austin did. He was never at that level. It's not Antonio Inoki level, you know what I mean, or somebody
yep.
like that. I mean,
Santo or Ken
Santo. Yeah,
Londas, like that. Yeah,
legit national heroes.
yeah,
I mean, he's never been there. I mean, for his time, yes, he was number one, but greatest of all time. It's like I know it's like it's when you make the argument, there's a lot of candidates, and there are, but he ain't one of them. I mean,
yeah.
he was the best of his time, but that doesn't make you. This business has been around since the 1880s, and it's been all over the world, and bigger in places than WWE is even now, and it's much bigger now than it was in Cena's heyday. So it's not like there. I mean, that there's been countries where a big match like everyone in the country watches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like used to be the days of when we used to watch Ali as a kid. I mean, that's what Inoki was at certain points. That's what Ricky Dozan was even
Yeah,
more.
and against the
Cena
Destroyer, right? I
can't.
mean, everyone's
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
it.
Ricky Dozan and Story. Yeah, yeah. Cena can't even do a tenth of that. Which is not a knock on him. Just different cultures and different things. And like I said, when you're the best of your time, that's a great thing to be. But all time is a very all encompassing word term.
And with Cena too, like he got booed by part of the audience. Do they love that Cody's not really? I mean, for the most part now, he's 100% babyface. I mean, he doesn't get booed at all.
No. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's good. But even if he did, even if there were some boos, so what? I mean,
Yeah,
the one thing Cena was proof of is that you can have a babyface booed and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, look, Dusty was booed by, I was at shows where Dusty was booed by 50-60% of the audience against Ric Flair.
yeah,
And but they drew. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't matter. When Mystico was on his big run in the mid 2000s, I mean, I watched a lot of that stuff, and he was booed by more than half the audience. He was just like Cena at the same time. He was booed. The hardcore fans hated him that they were there week in and week out. They resented that he was on top. Guess what? The arenas were full, so he was successful.
getting that reaction is the most important.
I mean, filling the buildings, having people love you or hate you. Yeah, I mean, obviously the worst thing is that they don't care. If they don't care and they're quiet, and then and the arenas are empty, that's bad. If they're full and you're a babyface and they're booing you, but the arenas are full and they're full week after week, then you're great in your position.
So you think Rock Cody is definitely locked into WrestleMania 41, not
No,
Rock
there's nothing
Roman?
locked. It's up to Rock. I mean, if he gets this giant, if there's somehow someone comes up with some giant movie offer, he's not going to turn it down. I mean, it's up to his schedule. Nothing's locked until in January. I think that's probably the deadline. I know in other years when Rock was flirting with coming back, it was always like he's got to make his call by mid-January. After that, we got to have our plans in play. So essentially, I would to use those other years, I would say mid-January he's going to have to make a commitment or not make a commitment. It's not locked. Obviously, he wants to do it. I think that it would take something gigantic for him not to do it, but 100%. I thought what was it? Los Angeles was. Oh, I never would say 100%, but for years I was told Los Angeles. I mean, for probably 2 years. I mean, it was first when the Dallas WrestleMania came. It was, I mean, there was a lot of talk of him and Roman Reigns in Dallas. And I was then told it's like, no, he wants Los Angeles. So that's like a year and a half out, and it was locked, but it didn't happen. And then when Los Angeles didn't happen, I know he told them, I'm up for Philadelphia, and no one believed it. It was just like, yeah, you didn't do Los Angeles, right? But guess what? He did do Philadelphia.
Big time. I feel like Rock Roman would be awesome, would be big business, but it does seem like storyline wise, Rock Cody would be better, just because I think that is just somehow, some way became the story and became the best part of the storyline.
Yeah, I think that Rock and Cody's the biggest, but you can always do Rock and Roman the next year. This year should not be Rock and Roman; it should be Rock and Cody. Yeah.
The Mama Road stuff, the blood, the beating him up, the him handing him the keys or whatever he handed him, like everything's kind of building up for those two.
Yeah, yeah, and what a great job Rock did. I mean, talk about not missing a beat. I mean, what a I mean, the worst part about Rock is when he comes back, it's like he's such a level above that it's so hard for people to just even keep up with him. I mean, really, Roman couldn't. Cody kind of could to a degree. I mean, he could keep up to the level of being his adversary, but even Cody, who as good as he is, I don't think he could match the charisma at all. I mean, Rock is just, I mean, he's like a Hulk Hogan. I mean, they're just those guys from a charisma standpoint. They're just at different levels from the rest of these guys. As great as these guys are, it's just like when I was watching him and his ability to talk and just his natural charisma and the ability to play before a crowd. And it's just like, man, he is a once in a lifetime guy.
Yeah, he's like just a total electrifying, to steal his catchphrase. But when he comes out, the aura in the building is even like, it's different. It's like the Hogan thing. It's like there's something different when this guy comes out versus somebody else. It's immense.
Yeah. Hogan's the closest comparison. Austin too. I mean,
yeah, yep.
But Austin came back last year, and it was a huge success. I felt, I mean, maybe just because of the noteworthiness and name value of being such a big movie star, maybe that's what puts him ahead of Austin right now. Because when they were around at the same time, I always thought like Austin was the bigger star of the two.
Yeah,
and they were at the same time. But now, I just and again, it's the movie star status, and Austin's kind of I don't want to he's kind of out of the limelight a lot by his own designs, because he could be in the limelight tomorrow if he wanted to be. But I feel now that like Rock is way above Austin today.
A lot of people were wondering that, like, wow, with this last run, the final boss, he totally changed back into being a heel, but elevated it to another level than Hollywood Rock. And people were saying, man, maybe he took a step above Austin, which is crazy to think, but maybe he took that step. I think so too.
Oh yeah. No, I think he's bigger than Austin now, easily. Yeah. I mean, he's incredible. Yeah.
Is that true with Austin and the money? Like, he was supposed to be a part of Mania, but he rather hang out with Poncho and Lefty and Moolah, the cats and the dog. I mean, what was the reason?
I don't have like the answer. I know that it was that the thing was scripted and he was in the Undertaker spot. Like
wow,
2 weeks out. Okay. That was the deal. And after the show, I go like, what happened to Austin? It's like, we didn't reach a money deal with him, and we did with Undertaker. And so that was the answer. Of course, they would have rather had Austin. As far as you'd have to ask Austin as to why. I mean, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it was money. He may just have not wanted to do it. So, but they did not come to a deal with him. They did talk to him. He was in that spot. They didn't reach the deal. So that's what happened. I mean, money could also be a thing of just being like, being very nice about it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
As far as just like, okay, I'll do it for X, knowing you're not going to get X. And that's a nice way to, kind of go off and go like, yeah, we just didn't reach a money figure and everything's cool, rather than just go in and say like, nah, I don't want to be on for whatever reason, like maybe last year was such a satisfying conclusion. I can't match it this year, so I don't want to do it.
One of the things too, I think a lot of people would expect him versus The Rock in a match next. You know what I mean? And he's like, I'm not wrestling again.
Yeah, right. And yeah, if he did that, and then people would jump to that one, and then it's kind of like, do I want? It's one thing to wrestle a young in his prime Kevin Owens. It's another thing for two guys, in their 50s to try to do a match with each other, even though the crowd would be electric and be very forgiving. The fact is Austin has a very, Austin takes his actual wrestling very, very seriously. I don't think Austin would want to come back and be anything close to a subpar, in his mind, match, which would not be a subpar match to the fans. Austin's expectations of himself and what he wants to do are really high. He's got that old worker mentality, of someone who, even if nobody else sees it, he knows, and he wants to work at a certain level. And if he can't, he doesn't want to be out there at 70%. And I think with Owens, I guess he got in good enough shape and was trustworthy, trusted Owens' ability enough. But with Rock, it'd be more difficult. Yeah. I mean, he didn't, that's one of the reasons he didn't work with Hogan in whatever year it was, 2002. Yeah. And Rock did, because Austin wasn't that gung-ho over it, and Rock was.
And what a match, Rock Hogan.
It was a legendary match, yeah.
Yep. The building was nuts. Obviously, those two, the charisma, and they just got
the charisma level was off the charts, and it was a stadium in Toronto. Toronto's a great city for that. So all the cards kind of fell perfectly there for that match, yeah.
And they love their Hogan up there. They were nuts for Hogan.
Right. In another city, they might have cheered Rock, and it wouldn't have been anywhere near as. Look, Hogan and Rock did a second match. Nobody even remembers it. It wasn't that good.
Right, backlash or No Way Out. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It wasn't that good, and the reason is it wasn't in Toronto. If you put that match in another city, may not have been anywhere close to as good. Because, like I said, I watched that second match. Look, nobody even remembers the second match.
Yeah, you're right. It's crazy. It was right before WrestleMania 19. The next year it was at No Way Out, and not a lot of people remember it or even talk about it. Really, it's WrestleMania 18 is all they talk about with Hogan and Rock.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the business right now, obviously WWE is on fire. How do you characterize AEW right now? Like, do you think they're doing okay? But because it seems like they put the footage out there, it gets a bit of a rise. Then what you smartly said, it's the next week. It's not that week. Let's see how they. And then the next week was down, and then this week was down. Obviously, there's a
lot of reasons this week was down.
Excuses that people say, but there's legitimate reasons. It wasn't live. NBA playoffs.
It was live on the West Coast, which hurts a lot. I mean, to me, I was going to judge a thing on the pay-per-view number, and I expected more buys out of the show than it got. So
what was it? What was the 135?
I would say, I mean, look, the real number is going to it'll take at least a month to get it. But if I'm going to do an estimate, my estimate was 122. I was expecting 135. Most people were expecting more than I was, so it did do less than, and so that's a disappointment, I guess. But they're also adding more shows, and if you add more shows, you're going to probably go down at some point. They were coming off a giant show, so people who pick and choose, they just watched the March show. I mean, the March show was a real success, but now as far as like AEW, they picked, like in some ways, it's not as bad at all as some people will lead you to believe, especially if you study the television business, which most of these clowns don't do. Look, aside from the NBA and then this week the NHL, they beat everything else on Wednesdays. As far as all of entertainment programming, most weeks they're way behind Raw, and they're a little bit behind Vanderpump Rules, and they beat everything else. The week before there was another show that beat them, so they were fourth. But most weeks they're third. That's phenomenal. It's great. Saturdays, is tougher, but they still hold their own. They're usually top 5 in the time slot. And Saturday, you're always going to have major sports on Saturday night. They were never going to win Saturdays. Friday, honestly, that show's such a throwaway. I don't even care what it does. I mean, they don't book anything great on it.
No.
You have Matt Menard, God bless him. He's a great talker, but you put Matt Menard in the main event. Come on. The show's such a throwaway. The Friday show is not that successful. The Saturday show, it has its good weeks and its bad weeks. The Wednesday show almost always has good weeks. This past week was a bad week. But I mean, as far to me, the one that I really look at the most, it's not the most important money-wise, but to me, the most important as far as are you clicking with the audience is your live attendance. It's not good. You know, it's struggling. They're way down from their peak. That's your answer. They're way down from their peak. They're putting out, you know, I mean, they put out fantastic wrestling matches. I mean, my God, that last pay-per-view had, you know, some of the best matches you'll ever see, including one of the best matches there's probably ever been. And every pay-per-view, they just kill it on pay-per-view. But you know, they're in a war with a company that's way ahead right now, that's pulling away. And this is what happens in wrestling wars. If you ever study wrestling wars, you know, it's almost a mirror image of the 80s with Crockett and Vince, and the late 90s with WWF and WCW, where you had a period where they were neck and neck and they were battling. And at the end of the day, Jim Crockett could not compete with Hulk Hogan. You know, it wasn't even Vince McMahon, it was Hulk Hogan. And, you know, they did great in 86. They were starting to falter in 87. By 88, man, they were not doing well and they had to sell. And then, you know, in the 90s, the one thing that changed everything was WCW got Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Randy Savage. They were past their prime, but the whole generation grew up with them as the biggest stars. So they had the biggest stars, and that's where the audience is going to go with the biggest stars. So they were winning until Vince, you know, got Steve Austin and The Rock. And then, you know, they got the new stars, and the other guys became the old stars. And when that happened, same thing is happening now. WWF pulled away. WCW went down hard and fast. They went from, you know, one of the best financial years any company in history had ever had in 98 to being out of business in early 2001. And I'm not saying that we're repeating ourselves, but historically, you know, it's exactly the same pattern. The business is different now. And if this was a year and a half ago, I would say that AEW would be in great shape doing what they're doing now, because they would still get a great renewal fee. But now we got a different thing. We are in a transition. Sports rights fees are no longer going through the roof. And cable is, you know, cable's dying a lot faster than anything else. And that's where AEW gets its money from, is cable. Streaming is coming in. So it's kind of like, if they can get the right media rights deal this year, they're fine. They're great forever, no matter what they draw at the house shows, and no matter, you know, what the TV ratings are, they're going to be great for years. If they don't, they could be on fire. You know, they could turn this thing around tomorrow and be on fire. And if they don't get the right deal, it's going to be tough for them, because whoever signs them is going to want to sign them for many years. So this deal is going to be your deal for the next 5 years. So that deal's the most important thing in wrestling this year.
And cable streaming, is it 50-50 now? Because I know it's getting extremely close with, like, how many people have cable versus how many people have streaming.
Well, I mean, more people have streaming because everyone's got a computer and not everyone has cable. As far as viewership goes, I mean, more people watch stuff streaming than watch stuff on cable, but there's like 5 billion options on streaming, and there's 126 options on cable. So per thing, you know what I mean? Like, if you put, just as an example, today, UFC's got a show on ESPN. It will be on ESPN Plus, and it will be on ESPN. The viewership will be at least 5 times as high on ESPN as it is on ESPN Plus. The Super Bowl did 123 million viewers, and 120 million were television, 3 million were cable. So the people who say, oh, you know, it's overcome, they don't look at the actual individual events. An individual event, no, you know, but because there's a zillion different options on all these streaming platforms on YouTube that people will watch, yes, more people are going to watch more hours on YouTube than they're going to watch on cable because of that. But if I have a TV show and my choice is streaming, or my choice is cable, in most cases, I would say cable. Now, Raw and Netflix will be interesting. But even so, like the NFL did Peacock. I mean, no one's on Netflix. So Netflix is maybe a completely different game. And Netflix is, you know, one of the highest. I think YouTube's actually the highest. But if you do, like the NFL did games on Peacock this year. I think they do the Thursdays on Amazon Prime, and their television games, on regular television, greatly outdrew those other games. So but the streaming games did far better than they would have done even a year ago. So it's gaining. But right now, but yeah, and again, like everything that we're talking about, it's like nobody should be doing their business based on, 2024, 2025. You got to be looking from your deal standpoint at 2027, 2028, and nobody knows where it's going to be then. But you got to guess correctly, or you're going to be in the wrong spot.
When you look at AEW, what happened last week with Tony Khan gets beat up in the ring, he sells the mic shot to the stomach like he got shot and murdered. I mean, the sell is one thing, the bad selling, bad acting, whatever you want to say, but he actually turned what I think was a negative because the audio issues. I don't know if everybody had that same audio, but for the most part, they had severe audio issues. Couldn't hear anything, echoes. I mean, it was just a super negative. And then you look at the rating.
It was weird because that like internationally the audio was fine.
It was wow. So why was it the U.S.?
It was TBS. I don't know, and it wasn't. I don't know if it was everywhere because, like, people were telling me. I ended up watching it later, and people just the audio is terrible. And I watched it, and it's like the audio wasn't good, but I had no problem hearing anything, But I know people had real problems. But in Canada and in the UK, it was perfect. So it was a TBS issue. Why it happened, I don't know. I mean, it's they've had issues like that before, but yeah, I mean that probably didn't help matters either. Is you have the show where people are used to major league production. You know what I mean? Yes. And you go in there, and to a lot of people watching, I guess most in the United States, you're watching and you had that echoey weird thing. It's minor league. It feels minor league production. That hurts you a lot these days. I mean, like what was the show? Oh no, it was WWE. When WWE did those shows at the Performance Center, during the pandemic, it's like their numbers collapsed, and it's like it's the same guys, it's the same stars. The only thing is that it feels minor league, and the audience doesn't want to watch it. You're spoiled. You want to see the arena setup, with all the thousands of people and all the bells and whistles. The matches themselves and the star power outside of that, if you don't have that backdrop, people don't care about it nearly as much.
And when you look at, the ratings were bad for numerous reasons, which we talked about, but I feel like he turned that negative into a positive because you got 12 plus million people watching the draft, and Rich Eisen on the NFL Network and a bunch of other people talking like, why does he have the neck brace on? And Rich Eisen, who's a wrestling fan, was like, well, in AEW, he took a pile driver by the Young Bucks and Jack Perry, and he, he might have hurt his neck. So, right, did he turn that negative into a positive? Because I feel like that got a lot of attention.
Well, everyone heard it, and and the NFL draft got giant numbers. As far as it's like you hear a million different viewpoints on it, and I guess the answer is we'll find out Wednesday, and maybe I don't want to say we're going to find out tonight because you know what, tonight's number is probably going to be super high by the standards of Collision because you're coming right after an NBA game. But Wednesday, I guess, is the answer. I think Wednesday we'll have a better idea. I don't think it's like everything. I don't think that it's a one thing that's going to turn around. I don't think it's a one thing that's going to kill. I know a lot of people were mad at the thing he said about the Harvey Weinstein thing. I wish he hadn't said it. I'll say that. I really hope that they don't. I hope that they on their television show do not talk about WWE at all for a while, at least until WWE does something to where they need to respond, because it's very important, and a lot of people don't understand this one, especially with today's society. You can't be a punching bag, and a lot of people just want them to be the punching bag. WWE can say whatever they want against them, and then if you fire back, it's like, oh, you're babies and blah blah. You can't be a punching bag. You do have to fire back. I think that they did their firing back already, and now they don't need to. If WWE does something, fire back all you want. I would say right now, leave it alone. I don't think they needed that line. I think they need to focus on, and he did. When he was on that thing, he says, we're on TBS, we're on TNT, there's our time slots and everything. Focus on that. put over Swerve and Will Ospreay and the greatest wrestling matches that you'll ever see, and he does that. You don't have to talk about WWE and Weinstein right now. If they do the thing, and they do it in their channels, like where did the Snowman nickname come from? Right, that came from WWE. People say that it's like it's only one side. I mean, it's both sides, and every wrestling war's been like this. But yeah, so I mean, if they call him Snowman, can he call them Weinstein? I guess it's kind of the same thing. I just wish that he wouldn't do that. There's things he can do, but at the end of the day, I think that the thing should be, this is what we did. This is what we put in the ring. Go match this. See if you can match it, and that should be your answer, not name calling. But it's inherent. It's wrestling. It appeals to an audience that likes name calling because that's what promos are anyway. So name calling will be a part of it, and it's been in every wrestling war since the beginning of time, and this one's going to be no different.
And Triple H took some shots at Will Ospreay too at one point. So I mean, it's not. It definitely isn't one-sided.
Yeah. And I don't know how much of the backstory on that, but the Triple H shots at Will Ospreay were very uncalled for, completely uncalled for. What Will Ospreay said, and I wish again he didn't do the line about the boss's daughter thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it needed that. But as far as answering back, he had every right to do so because they were in, they were in negotiations. They were in negotiations with both sides. One side made a better offer. He explained his situation, which was supposed to be, he had a very good reason. And, look, I'll talk about it because he said it publicly. He said it. It's not a secret. I don't know if him and Alex Windsor are married or boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know. But they're a couple. They have he has a stepson. They live in England. Her husband committed suicide a couple of years ago. And for that reason, she wants to be with her family. She wants to stay in England. So, would he have moved to the United States if 100% necessary? Yes, he would have. But he did not want to. He wanted to live in England. They all wanted to stay in England with her family. He is very willing, as he's doing with AEW, to fly from England to the United States every single week. Okay? And he would have done that with WWE as well. He would fly in every single week from England, which is a hell of a deal to do. It's not like you're flying in from Florida. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And he would, like you said, he would have done that with either company, and they knew that. And then for Levesque to go out there and say, I don't want a guy like that. He's not willing to grind. And it's like the guy is arguably, he is the most spectacular wrestler in the world. He's arguably the best wrestler in the world. And to go in there and cheap shot a guy who had told you he would be willing to fly from England every single week to do your tour and say he wasn't willing to put up with the grind. And he knew why. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to move from England, which you never said. It's like, I'm not going to move from England. I'm not going to tell you why. I just want to live here. I'm some selfish guy. I'm a big star. That's not what happened. And at the end of the day, the reality is that one side offered more money for less dates than the other side, and he made the business decision to go. So, and he was respectful. He never ripped on WWE, never ripped on their talent, said he would love to have wrestled Seth Rollins and people like that. He did not deserve any cheap shot, and he got one. So yeah, he deserved an answer back on that case. Yeah.
Hey, those guys, Hall and Nash, were applauded for working less dates for more money, right? I mean, that was like the whole thing. So he's doing the same exact thing. He should be applauded for it.
He should be applauded for business. And look, obviously, he gets off on having great matches, and everyone should, but he does probably more than most. And he's going to have better matches in AEW than he's going to have in WWE, just stylistically and opponents. That's just how it is. So that's another factor, and it's like, would he be more famous in WWE? Yes, he would be more famous. That's the thing you balance. I'm going to be more happy or more famous. And at the end of the day, he chose more rich. That's what he chose.
Yep. And your star rating just came out. 6.5 stars for him versus Danielson. One of the best matches I've ever seen, for sure. I don't know if it's Flair Steamboat, but it's up there as far as just
Yeah,
chemistry.
you know, it's a total different era. I will say this, you know, I was at many Flair Steamboat matches, and none of them ever had the heat this one had. I mean, I thought it was the second best match I've ever seen, you know, and the more I analyze those two matches, it's very clear the second and not the first, because it did not have, you know, it's like, I'm going to knock the second best match I've ever seen.
Right.
It did not have certain elements that the fourth Omega Okada match had, but the fourth Omega Okada match had 3 matches to build from it. It had 3 falls. It had 69 minutes of stuff, and it had more of a thought process. You know, the thought process was much deeper. I mean, like when I watched Omega Okada, I was amazed at the thought process. I'd never seen a match with the thought process that went into a match and the different spots that you didn't see coming. I mean, it was just like an epic. Ospreay Danielson athletically was better, but the other elements, no, it was, you know, it didn't have that. But did it have story? You know, did it have heat? Had incredible heat. It had great. That audience helped that match so much. But those two guys are, you know, right now today, they're probably the 2 best wrestlers in the world, and they both had like their best match. I think that it was Will's best match of his career. I think for sure it was Danielson's best match of his career. And they had it on the same night in front of a fantastic crowd. So there you go. And again, like we talked about with Hogan and Rock, the crowd's a giant part of this thing.
It is crazy with that match. Like going in, you know, okay, Danielson's probably the best wrestler, probably one of the best wrestlers of all time. Ospreay's probably the best wrestler of today. Like them colliding, it's like, okay, let's see how the chemistry works. It's like, oh my god, amazing! Exactly, kind of what you'd expect, but almost over expectation.
But better.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I expected, like, you know, one of the best matches of the year, but like even like 3 minutes in, it was just like, this is like way. And some of it was the crowd, but just like little things that they did. You know, again, they put thought into it, but just the little things they did and when they did it, I was blown away for 32, 33 straight minutes. Just going like, this is unbelievable. And it was like, there's a running joke at my house whenever there's a great match. And the first time actually, it was told was about 20 minutes into that Omega Okada match, the fourth one, where people who are watching with me go like, your week is going to suck. Because what happens is that they know Thursday when that Observer comes out and people see the star ratings, they're going to get really mad because it's like, this is the greatest match we've ever seen. You're going to have to rate it like it's the greatest match. And I mean, I remember in that one, it's like, you know, you've rated matches 6.25 then and that are great, but this is way better. What are you going to do? It's like, that's what I'm going to do. And the same thing happened here, but it was a lot quicker in that match. It was like a half hour in the Danielson match. I mean, it was like, the first time someone goes, you're going to have a bad week, which is like a joke. It's not like it's really a bad week,
right?
But it was like 10 minutes into the match. It was just like, boy, you're going to have a bad week. And then at the end, when the match was over, we were all talking and we're going like, is this the greatest match we've ever seen? And we all were talking. And it's like, it is not the greatest match we've ever seen because we were all together for that other match. And that other match had more thought put into it. But it was the second best match I ever saw.
Now, do you get a lot of flack for the star rating? It seems like over the years, I always use it and I always read the star ratings and I'm always into it because I want to know, like, should I watch it? Should I not? Like, you know, expectations. I use it like as more of like a barometer, not like this is complete fact because I got to make my own opinion. But I like to use your star ratings as like the barometer. Like, okay, Danielson Ospreay was awesome. I need to watch that match. Or like, oh, this match wasn't that great. Okay, maybe I could watch it at a later time. But this match, I got to watch immediately. Do you get too much flack, do you think, for the star ratings? That people are like too crazy about them?
People, I mean, I think most people are probably okay with it, but there's absolute insanity, you know, especially when you're arguing about like a quarter of a star. You know, I don't even like to talk about star ratings because it's stupid. It's not that big of a deal, but I do it for exactly the purpose. I tell people that it's a recommendation. If there's something that says 6.5 stars, you really probably will be very, very happy to watch it. You know, if it says 5 stars or 4.75 or 4.5, you'll probably be really happy to watch it. You know, if it says 1, probably can skip it. You know what I mean? But arguing 4.75, it should have been 4.5. It's like, dude, we agree. You know, I mean, it's like, I have my one of my best friends who always he texts me after every big match. What'd you do? What'd you do? And we're always within a quarter star, sometimes a half of each other. We never disagree. Well, I won't say never. I mean, there's a match here and there that we do, but it's like if he says 4.25 and I say 4 3/4, it's like, okay, fine, we agree. Great match. If he says 2 and I say 4, which has never happened, it's like, okay, we disagree. Then we move on to the next thing. It's not like I don't fight over it and people going like 25 years ago, why didn't you give this? Why did you give this 4 3/4? It's like, who cares? I mean, really, it's 25 years ago. If I gave it 4 3/4, it means, man, you goddamn should watch it then. But I do it for, I mean, it's for my own stuff as far as at the end of the year, the stuff that I rate 4 3/4 and above is the stuff that when I make my match of the year ballots, I start thinking about. These are the, if I don't go up to 4 3/4 for a match, my subjective opinion doesn't mean it's yours and doesn't have to be yours. Then at the end of the year, when I do my subjective opinion for match of the year, I am considering it. And that's what I do. And if I rate it 5, it's like, I'm probably considering it a little bit more, but whatever. But it's done for recommendations for people. If they see this match got 5 stars and it was in London, England, and I haven't seen it, and I usually don't watch this promotion, it's probably a good recommendation. Yeah, if you see it, you'll probably like it. So that's all it is.
I always just laugh. Some people are like, oh, how come it didn't get 5? And like they go crazy about it. It's like, well, if you rate it 5, then like, you rate it 5. You know what I mean? It's their opinion. Yeah, they go crazy.
But I mean, it's like I think the craziness is the ones, and there's so many of them, where I rated 4 3/4, and it's like, dude, I said it was fantastic. What are we arguing over? If I rated it 3, then and I've done that too. But then you can argue. You think something 5 and I rated it 3. Yes, we have a difference of opinion. 4 3/4 or 5, that's not a difference of opinion. That's an agreement. I mean, it's fine tuned. You know what I mean? It's like if you want to do whatever, it's like round up to the half. So anything over 4.5 is a 5. If you want to do it that way, like a movie guide that doesn't do half stars. So if I do 4 3/4 and whatever, it's just to me it's so silly. It's silly. It's not really a topic I like and discuss because it's just what I think. I would recommend something and people go, this guy's had a 5-star match and this guy never did. And it's like, yeah, and this guy I'd probably given 54-star matches and the other guy I'd probably given 5. But you don't even look that up. You know what I mean? You just 5, it's like that's way overemphasized. If you want to count matches that people had, count 4s, because at least that's the excellent barometer. 4 and above, not 5. 5 is like match of the year. And goddamn, like there's Hall of Fame pitchers that never pitched a perfect game. You know what I mean? Almost all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, who cares? Who cares? Does it mean that like somehow their careers aren't good or whatever, or they didn't have the right opponents, they weren't in the right place at the right time, or maybe, whatever. I mean, it's different styles. It's hard, man. It's hard for me to give 5 stars to a CMLL match, and I love CMLL because there's something missing. And nobody gets more heat than a CMLL match. It's harder for WWE, but it's easier for WWE. Like I think that a bad, well, I say bad, but I think it's much harder for a match in Japan, which is funny because exactly the opposite of what people think. It's much harder for a match in Japan to be a 4-star match because of the caliber and the more reserved crowd than it is in WWE. But when you get that audience really into it, a WWE audience, it's harder. It's not impossible. I've given plenty of WWE 5-star matches, but I think it's harder because WWE is I guess this is the word. I'm going into way more detail than I need to on this, but one of the things that I look for is thought process. I mean, obviously you're looking for heat, you're looking for timing, you're looking at not going too long, not going too short, hitting your peak, execution, you don't want a bunch of botched spots. But the thing to me for a standout match, like the Ospreay match with Danielson, is when I'm watching this, can me, Dave Meltzer, watch this and pick every single spot they're going to do in the order they do it? which I can do with most WWE matches, for the most part. And there's a reason, because they play to an audience where WWE stylistically, and it's going to change because I'm already seeing the changes with Triple H. WWE has always been about, you get over certain moves in certain orders. It's a very predictable type of match. If it works with the audience, that's great. And like I said, but you don't get surprised very often in a WWE match. It's just the way the matches are structured and the way they're agented. In AEW, people take more chances. They take more risks. They may fail more by doing so. In Japan, the same way. But they also may succeed more when the idea, there's far more ideas and thought put into it than just, this is my move. I'm going to hit it 3 times. You're going to hit your move 3 times. And then the 4th time, I'm going to beat you. Or, at WrestleMania or something like that. And it's still a great match. But like, again, Roman and Cody, just an example, loved the match for the story. Most times, if I watched that same match and it was 2 other people on a different show, I would go, all those run-ins, are you kidding me? But this match was about run-ins. Like, people were doing that afterwards to me. How could you rate a match with all those run-ins high? It's like, because the story of the match was the run-ins. You knew that going in, and if they didn't do the run-ins, it would have been a worse match. In most cases, run-ins are a crutch. We all know that. They're either a crutch to save face for the person who's, for the baby face losing or the heel losing, or they're a way to get to the next step, which is actually booking. But that's like one run-in. If you're doing 5 or 6, it's a total crutch. You're just, basically trying to, bump referees and all that. I mean, anyone can do that. Takes no thought. But in this match, the run-ins were a huge part of it. But at the same time, if you asked me before that match started, what's going to happen in the match, other than Undertaker being in the Austin spot and the Seth Rollins run-in, I take that back. I knew there'd be a Seth Rollins run-in because that was the thing. Made the music in the Seth Rollins run-in where you didn't know it was Seth Rollins, even though it ended up being Seth Rollins.
Yep.
And the decision there, but for the most part, I could tell you what he's going to win with, roughly the amount of time, roughly the order of the run-ins, the finishing sequence, the near falls, because Roman's going to do his moves, and then what I mean. It's a very easy match to watch. So I'm watching it. It's not challenging me mentally. It's like, but it's excellent. It's excellent. But I look, it's like in a movie. If you watch a movie, and the acting is good, the story is good, but it's a movie that you yourself in your head can pick out every single spot that's going to happen ahead of time, and you could half write it yourself or write it yourself. It's very different than watching a movie going like, this writer is so far above me, because I sure could never do anything like that. I'm going to be way more impressed with that other movie.
I gotcha. Makes sense. And I always think like, okay, you said Cody Roman, I think it was 4 3/4. Like, okay, then I would need to watch that match because that means it's really
that's
good.
a great match.
Right? Yeah.
It's one of the best matches of the year. And people getting mad at that, they don't understand. Anyone who gets mad at 4 3/4, unless it's to be mad that you thought the match sucked and I was way too high, you don't even know what you're talking about. Okay. So, yeah.
Yep. And I even loved their match last year too. And I felt like this story kind of built upon it. So like, I even loved the match they had last year too.
As a match, I liked the match. I didn't rate it as high because this had the climactic finish, right? And it had The Rock and more excitement.
And an awesome
as a wrestling match, I liked last year's match as a wrestling match better. I didn't rate it as high because this match was more, last year's match, put it this way. If Cody would have won last year's match and the reaction that I perceive would have happened when he did, that'd have been a 5-star match. With all the interference and the screw job at the end, I couldn't give it a 5-star match as good as the match was because it's kind of like, Solo runs in, this, that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, we've seen that how many straight pay-per-views, and the finish is a big part of the match. So that's why, I did not give the match the year before 5 stars, which it was absolutely on track to get. But that was when I thought that they would do a incredible finish, not a predictable finish. This year, you've got the perfect finish, but I don't think the match wasn't as good as last year. But partially, again, for the two guys, it wasn't supposed to be, because the focus was the run-ins, not having a great match. Not that the match was bad. The match was great, but yeah, I just thought that, like, if you're just like watching the match move for move and building, and the way the audience was built by the wrestling itself, I thought that the 2023 match was better. Yeah,
but obviously you got to watch them both. I mean, just if you just look at the story, you're like, okay, I have to watch these both.
Yeah, but they're both fantastic matches. They both, Cody and Roman, fantastic job both times, of course.
I always do, like, okay, like, this is years ago, but it's like AJ versus Minoru Suzuki, New Japan Pro Wrestling. I saw it got 4.75 or whatever it was, and I was like, oh, I have to watch that. I mean, I was like, that looks like something I'm going to go out of my way to watch. And then, of course, if people, oh, it should have got 5 or whatever, but like, that's kind of nitpicky. You just should watch it.
A lot of people thought that should have got 5. And look, at one match of the year, and I gave it 4.75. So probably match of the year should have got 5. So whatever. Yeah. But it's 4 3/4, whatever. It was
right, exactly. But
it's still a great rating. It's still the best rating of that whole G1, probably. So yeah.
My point was, like, I need to watch this, because I wouldn't have if it was like a low rating, but I saw that rating. I was like, oh, I got to go out of my way and watch this. I don't really care if it got 5 or not, but I know it was really, really good.
Yeah, I'd say anything over 4 you're going to like. Hopefully,
Yes.
That's the theory behind it. Yeah.
Yep. Now, as we hit the wind down here, we'll head towards the finish. Just in your view, what can AEW do to kind of, I don't know, get over this hump? Because they have the talent. I mean, Okada, one of the best in the world. Ospreay, obviously, probably maybe the best. Danielson, maybe second best, or you can arguably say he's the first. Omega, possibly coming back. I mean, they've got so much talent. What could they do to turn this around?
It's very hard with WWE being this hot, because you're the secondary brand. It's kind of like if you're in a city and you got 2 sports teams in the same sport, 2 franchises in the same sport, like say in New York or whatever. And one of the teams is just the more popular. The other team might be more exciting, might have better players, might even have a better record, but the other team is just the established team. It's like, what do you do to turn it around? It's like, can you play better? I mean, you can always book better. You can always use talent better, but they're not going to beat WWE unless WWE just collapses. WWE's got too much of a head start now. I mean, it was funny because a couple of years ago, they weren't that far behind them, and in attendance, they were pretty much neck and neck. But what happened was, it was the thing that I think that was missing, or whatever, is this was actually really good AEW versus really bad WWE. And even then, really bad WWE was, because of the brand name, doing better ratings, but attendance wise, they were pretty even. As time went on, you had really good AEW versus really good WWE, and pulled away. One of the things I remember is studying this, which is funny because actually Tony Khan even brings this up too. There was AFL when I grew up as a kid. Every Sunday we had AFL football on NBC and NFL football on CBS. They were both on, and we had the Oakland Raiders here, and we had the 49ers too. Okay, the Oakland Raiders, but I loved the AFL. The AFL games were way more exciting. Finally, in '69, AFL even won the Super Bowl, and it wasn't even a dominant. It was a dominant NFL team, the Colts, that killed everyone, and an AFL team that arguably was not even necessarily the best AFL team. They did win the playoffs, but there were 2 or 3 other teams just as good, the Raiders and the Chiefs that year. So, and then the Jets ran away in that Super Bowl game. I mean, it wasn't even a close game. It was I won't say embarrassing, but they won. And the next year, it's like AFL, more exciting games, more passing, more exciting players, more charismatic players. Nobody's more charismatic than Joe Namath that year in the entire sport. Next year, NFL ratings were double AFL ratings, because the NFL had the head start. But double was better than triple what they'd been the year before. So the point is like, for those of you who are expecting as long as WWE is clicking, AEW is not going to beat them in TV ratings, and they're not going to come close. Granted, yes, it happened, but it was different things. But as far as what AEW can do is what I would say is do not worry about week-to-week ratings. But this is a bad thing I can say because they're in their contract year and they have to.
Right.
So this year you have to worry about it. So you're going to do these things like pile drive Tony Khan and show the CM Punk footage and things like that, that I would say, don't do it. Think of your future. Think of your future. The problem is their future is now. It's a completely different mindset of any other period because it's not about building your pay-per-view business for a year from now or taking a guy who you know can be good and know that if we put him on TV every week, it's going to take a year for him to catch on and the ratings to catch up. But if we we're putting him on TV because we're not worried about this week's ratings. We're worried about a year from now when we think these young guys are all going to explode. So it leads you to put, Adam Copeland on TV every week or as much as possible. Even though in 3 years, will Adam Copeland even be in the company? Probably not. He's getting towards the end of his career. Will Bryan Danielson be in the company in 3 years? Probably not. So sometimes when I watch these guys, and they're great, Bryan Danielson's one of the best in the world. Adam Copeland, fantastic promo, fantastic, unbelievable worker for his age. Unbelievable. But I always go, but damn, in 2 years, they're not going to be here. And these other guys are going to be here. But he's got to do what's right for now because of the TV thing. My thing would be to say, pick 4 to 6 young guys and build and build and build. Will being one of them, obviously the most obvious, but whatever it is, Swerve, whatever, not that Swerve's young, but pick your guys that are going to be with you in 5 years and in 3 years and build for 3 to 5 years, but they don't have that option. So, I'm always against the hotshot thing, but I understand why they do it now, because they kind of have to for the next, until the deal signed. When the deal signed, I will say this, when the deal signed, at that point, I would say, do not worry about weekly ratings, worry about good pay-per-views, and worry about getting over young talent. That should be your focus. Until then, right now, you got a hot shot for ratings, and hot shotting for ratings usually doesn't lead to a lot of long-term growth. So, and it's not working. But they have to do what they have to do for right now.
You think Swerve is the guy, or would you put the title on Ospreay, or so do something like that?
I think Ospreay's the guy, but you don't need to rush it. Look, if it was me, Ospreay beats Swerve at Wembley. I think it writes itself. That doesn't mean he's going to do it that way, but that's what I would do. But you're always open to change. If Strickland hits it really, really big and he starts drawing, it's like, no, absolutely not. Do not take the title off him if it's clicking. If it's not clicking, then you do. That's what the position of world champion should be. You got to be a guy who clicks. And it's too early to say if he will or he won't. He's only had it for 6 days. In 4 months, we'll know. You know what I mean? In 4 months, if this guy's carrying you and you're doing great, you know what? Hold Ospreay back for a year. That's fine. You're on a roll. But to me today, right now, what would I say? I'd say Ospreay at Wembley writes itself.
And just to bring up Cody just one more time, because I forgot to ask you this before, did he sell $1 million in merch in a week during WrestleMania? Did I read that correctly? Is that right?
I have never heard that.
I think it was WrestleNomics. Somebody reported it was $1 million in a week or something. I was like, well, $1 million in a week? Oh my God.
I never heard that. I suppose it's not impossible. If you think about,
WrestleMania World, they had all that stuff there.
They had all the stuff at WrestleMania. WrestleMania itself, you're talking about, roughly 140,000 people.
Yep.
And if you're going to go, let's say $30 a head is 5.2 million. So could $1 million of that have been Cody? That's high, but if you throw in WrestleMania, the World, and everything like that, yeah, I think that's possible. Which is it's an amazing number, isn't it?
So if that's true, obviously he's the man. People saying not the man, he's the man.
Okay, but I will say this, and again, it's totally different. But think about the machine. Think about how popular wrestling is. Think about WrestleMania. The fact is that I remember when I did get a number. So remember when the Young Bucks were really, really hot with their merchandise? I think it was 2017. Remember that year where I think it was 2017 where they got the Hot Topic deal, right?
Yep.
And then they were number one at Hot Topic for a couple months. They did 8.8 million in like 4 months, which is You know what I'm saying? And to me, that's, if you hear that, then Cody doing $1 million for WrestleMania week, I mean, it's impressive too. But when you're talking about like as an independent entity, you know, not even on national television, of course, Hot Topic is an easier place to is you know, front and center. Hot Topic is going to be a lot of sales too. But I mean, the point is that, you know, there can be a lot. Those poor young bucks, they sold out all those shirts for all that money. They didn't get, you know, their percentage was so low. It's not like they could retire on it. Whereas I don't know what Cody's percentage is. But again, the company still gets the lion's share. It's not like these guys will make money on it, but you know, I mean, but Austin, I mean, geez, Austin used to get you know, $1 million quarters in his royalties, and his royalties are probably a small percentage of what the actual sales were. So yeah, I mean, it's like whatever Cody's selling, it's certainly not as much as Austin was selling. There's no way.
No. Yeah, Austin was crazy. You would have local stores they would be selling Austin licensed merch, like right by me all the time.
You would go out in public and go to a mall, and you would see Austin shirts all day.
Yes.
I go out all the time. I don't see many wrestling shirts, and it's funny because the ones I see are usually Austin and Randy Savage, but I mean I never see Roman Reigns shirts. I don't even see Cody shirts. I used to see Bullet Club shirts all the time. I don't see them anymore either. So
I always see NWO shirts too. I see a ton of NWO when I'm out there.
NWO shirts. I don't see them as much, but if I go to a show, I see NWO shirts for sure. You know, and NWA is 25 years ago. But yeah, I absolutely, if I go to a live show, yeah, I'll see NWO. I'll see considerable NWO shirts even today. Yeah, and Austin shirts.
I always joke around with my buddy when we go to concerts. Like we'll go to hard rock concerts, Stone Cold, Hogan shirts, NWO shirts. I mean, it's all old school.
It's old shirts. It's the old guys. It's not the guys now. But you know what? In 20 years, you're going to be going to concerts. That's when you're going to be seeing Cody Rhodes shirts, probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's you. That's like the way it works.
It's always like that. The whole age thing. It's what you grew up with. There's a whole generation growing up with this stuff. Okay, that are kids now, that are like teenagers, that may not be buying all the shirts this week, but they're buying some. But when they get to be older, they're going to be into retro, and their retro is going to be Cody Rhodes and you know, Seth Rollins and the bloodline. Yeah. So it'll happen.
Cody is the guy, though, you think, right? He's the man, if you will. He's the number one, the lead dog.
Yes, until Rock comes back. I don't think he can surpass Rock.
Right.
But aside from Rock, I think Cody Rhodes is the guy. I think that Roman Reigns passed the torch, and Roman Reigns will always be, you know, superstar emeritus, just like John Cena is. But week in, week out, Cody Rhodes is the guy, and a worthy guy, and it's working. You know, I don't worry about him. There are plenty of guys that I've seen put in that position when it's time to make the move, including Swerve being one of them, where I go like, I don't know. You got to prove it to me. I don't know. You know, I mean, I go in with an open mind. Cody, my mind is not open. I mean, it's not, he proved that to me. He proved that to me when he came back from the pec injury and he was drawing all the house shows and selling merchandise at that point. It's like, okay, you got it. That's why he could have won it last year and it would have been great. I think that we can now make a very strong argument that what they did was best. And believe me, I was not on that side at first. And you can make, you know, again, we'll never know. We'll never know. Like, would Cody have taken off bigger had he won last year? And would those matches with Lesnar at the pay-per-views been bigger with Cody as the champion defending? We'll never know. But it's really hard to argue against the success of this year's WrestleMania as being the optimum with hindsight.
Yeah, I feel like he's on a roll, and he seems like a very genuine, good babyface. Like, there's no phoniness about it. He seems very genuine, which is great.
Well, he learned a lot from his father, and he's a learner. That's another thing with Cody. It's like you don't get to be because you know, move for move and everything like that. Cody's very good, but it's not like he's Will Ospreay,
right?
But he's a bigger star than Will Ospreay, and probably will always be, even though Will Ospreay's got great potential to be a big star too, because Cody is really smart at being a star. But you know, you're 5 years old and you're listening to Dusty Rhodes. You know what I mean? When it comes to knowledge and understanding of how to be a big star, growing up with Dusty Rhodes, that gives you a giant leg up of knowledge that these other guys will never have.
And you get inherited some charisma too, which is nice. When when you're born, you inherit that in, which is good for the most part.
Yeah. No. Being the son of Dusty Rhodes, it gives him a lot of sympathy. You know what I mean? And a lot of, like older people, like even like with me who grew up on Dusty Rhodes, it's kind of like, Cody Rhodes, the son, I mean, and I think people don't really get, how, I mean, I have to live with how big Dusty Rhodes is because my son's actually named in sort of by Dusty Rhodes. But my son's best friend was named Dusty because his parents, from my generation, I mean, they lived and died with Dusty Rhodes. So they named their son Dusty. That's my son's best friend. My son was named Cody because of a conversation I had with Dusty Rhodes. So, I mean, you understand Dusty Rhodes, how big Dusty Rhodes is. There's a generation of people who the idea of this guy being Dusty Rhodes' son is it's a real big deal. That gives him, when they chant Dusty during his matches and everything like that, and he tears well up. And, goddamn, I was there for the Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes match, awesome. It was in Vegas. But I mean, the match was awesome. It was probably the best match of Dustin's career and might have been the best. I think it might have been still the best match of Cody's career too. I think it might still be. Let me think about that. But people are in the crowd crying, and part of it is because it's to the two sons of Dusty, and they're chanting Dusty, Dusty, and they're in the ring both crying, and it's like, what a scene that was, I mean, that's one of the most memorable matches of the last 5 years for sure.
Absolutely awesome match. And if you look at it, which is even greater that Cody brought this up, that awesome picture that Dusty knew to make sure that they took the picture of him holding the title at the Garden from Superstar, the title you stole from my daddy at the Garden. I mean, just everything tied in so perfectly.
What a great story. I mean, the funny part is for Dusty, the NWA title was always the big thing, not the WWF. But it doesn't matter. The WWF won the war. You know what I mean? Yep. So it made, I know. Like he walked in on day one. This is your storyline. And it's like, wow, he was promised the WWE title to come over. I was like, what a great move. And that was Vince. That wasn't Triple H. I mean, like we could all knock Vince for, believe me, not a lot we can knock Vince for. But Vince was the one who signed Cody, and Vince was the one who signed Cody with the premise that you were going to win the world title at WrestleMania. And originally it was going to be the WrestleMania the year before, but they talked Vince out of it and talked Vince into waiting one more year. So, I mean, all of that was Vince. That wasn't Paul Levesque. Not that Paul Levesque was on board for it, but it was Vince who made the final decision on, bringing Cody in, Cody being in the main event at Mania, Cody winning the title at a Mania, not this one, whatever. Everything was all that was all Vince's decision making.
And hey, 2-year storyline led to huge business. So it worked. Home run.
Oh, well, look, WrestleMania was the biggest event in the history of wrestling. The biggest. People will argue. I would say the biggest mainstream to me is still WrestleMania 1, but biggest money is WrestleMania 40.
Unbelievable when you look at it. But before we let you go, please tell everybody where they could find the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Figure 4 Week, like everything that is Dave Meltzer.
Yeah. Just go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. I do a newsletter every week, which covers the in-depth business. It's just kind of a business analysis, review of matches, matches that you should see every week, based on star ratings, just recommendations. It's not there to be like foolproof or anything, but it's there where you look at it and go, okay, this match got 4.5 stars, probably should, or 4 stars, probably should go out and see it if I didn't watch it live. And, just like how everyone's doing, what's happening, what's going to happen next, all over the world. I try to learn from all over the world. I try to learn from Mexico, from Japan. It's very, very lucky. I was very lucky, with the benefit of hindsight to be so close with Terry Funk, when I was much, much, much younger, and kind of learn the ropes from him. Because Terry Funk, the difference between Terry Funk and everybody else is that Terry Funk was always 10 years ahead and not 5 years behind. And so he always taught me, 10 years ahead, which you can't do now. You can only make at most now be 18 months ahead because things move so quick. but I try to be ahead and not think about this week. I always try to think about down the road and open to all styles, because what you see in wherever on your indies, if it's new and it's good, you're going to be 3 years ahead of figuring out that it's going to be there in WWE. Because Paul Levesque's WWE is a lot closer to PWG of years ago than anyone wants to admit. And it's taken elements from Japan. It's taken elements from independence and AEW and all that, because that's where the innovation comes from. The ECW was never big success, but ECW was incredible for innovation. And that's the thing. If you want to see the future, you got to look at the innovation, not close your mind and go, oh, this isn't what we do in WWE this year, so it's wrong. So this WWE is the only way to do it, or my childhood is the only way to do it. There's a million ways to do it, and if you got good marketing behind you, you'll make it work. But the in-ring is going to be evolving based on how the crowd evolves. And if you watch the grassroots, the grassroots will give you the future before it gets to the big time, just like in music. But that was one of the lessons that Terry Funk always taught me. And I was really fortunate, because if not, I'd probably be one of those guys, that you see now, where this is how we did it in 1995. And if they're not doing it the way that I did it when I was a kid, it's like they're wrong, and wrestling sucks and wrestling's not popular. And I never want to be that guy. And I've seen it in so many people, but I never want to be that guy.
And a little recommendation I got, now I need to watch Danielson versus Blue Panther, CMLL.
That wasn't that great. That was more of just a wish of Danielson. The show the week before was fantastic. Okay, like that. The 8-man tag was better. Danielson and Blue Panther was a cool match for Bryan Danielson, and to watch Bryan Danielson go in there with a 63-year-old man in his dream match, a guy who doesn't even do singles matches anymore, and carry it to a very emotional match. But that match isn't at the level of the matches we talked about. But as far as for Bryan Danielson, it was a unique match for him. For him, it was like, it's a career highlight, and he's good enough, and he made sure it was good. That was one where, everybody was worried. It's like, unfortunately, if it was today's Bryan Danielson against the Blue Panther of 30 years ago, oh my God, would that match be incredible. But it's a 63-year-old version who did the best he could, got in shape. And it was a really good match, but it wasn't a match of the caliber of, the matches that we've been talking about today.
I just love Danielson, so I'll have to check that out. And the 8-man I wanted to check out too.
The 8-man's the 8-man's fantastic. The work is great. The AW guys were great. The Mexican guys are such good workers, as far as just the ability to work a crowd. Because the thing that people don't know about the Mexican wrestlers, like Ultimo Guerrero which is an example. He's past his prime, he's old now. But let's say the guys like a Volador, who's already in his 40s too. But these guys work so many matches a week in front of live crowds, so their ability to work a live crowd and get heat at a live crowd is above anybody that you'll see in the United States, just because they do it so much. So when you watch those guys and their ability to work the crowd in that 8-man tag, you just go in there, like, it's not the moves and it's not the style that you've grown up on and necessarily like, but if you're into working the crowd and crowd reactions, it is a master class. That match is a master class in working the crowd. And especially you got a freaking sellout crowd that's on fire, stomping its feet like it's a freaking earthquake. That match has that going for it. That match was exceptional. For crowd heat, boy, you want to see guys who know how to work a crowd. Those guys that are in Mexico, not the undercard guys, but the veterans that are on top, even, like Mystico and Volador, Ultimo Guerrero, those guys, even though there's guys like Templario and Máscara Dorada that are more spectacular and all that, those veterans there, man, they just know how to work.
Now, where can everybody follow you social media wise?
You know, I mean, I'm on Twitter. You know, that's the only place that I'm doing stuff is Twitter, and just you know, I mean, probably the best place is the Observer message board, which is part of the subscription. But I'm on there all the time. You know, I'm always answering questions. And my Friday show that I do with Garrett Gonzalez, you know, I go with Brian Alvarez on Mondays, Wednesdays, and either Saturday or Sunday. You know, if it's a pay-per-view week Saturday, not a pay-per-view week Sunday. But my Friday show with Garrett Gonzalez, we do a lot. You know, just if you have any kind of questions on anything, you know, that's a show where we don't really do as much news as overview. I mean, as much TV reports. We do news, but we don't. But that's a show if you want like questions or history questions, modern questions. That's probably a good show. So, especially on that show, I have time to do detailed answers. You know, on Twitter, you know, if you got to send me a real question on Twitter, I can't answer it in 240 characters or whatever it's going to be. But right. I absolutely, and even on the message board, I can do better. But I can really do good on the Friday show with Garrett Gonzalez.
At Twitter, it's at Dave Meltzer WON. So if anybody's out there want to follow you on there, which is always a fun follow. So Dave, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate all the time today.
Okay, hey, I loved it. I had a lot of fun today.